Today, Nida, page 50, we're just finishing the sugya of the previous page, which is 49b, and then we'll go to the Daf 50, getting close to the Siyum Hashas. Just, we have a couple of weeks and we are there, the whole Shas. Anyway, Memtet Amud Bet, that's the very end of the page, 49b, and then we'll go to 50. Mishnah, כל הראוי לדון דיני נפשות, ראוי לדון דיני ממונות, ויש ראוי לדון דיני ממונות, ואינו ראוי לדון דיני נפשות. This is a series of Mishnayot dealing with a condition for one thing that created a condition for another thing, but not necessarily the opposite way, which means there is a situation that, for example, here, someone can sit in the court. Here they're speaking about the qualification for someone to sit in a rabbinical court. So they said there are situations for someone who's sitting in a rabbinical court dealing with a monetary issue, and that judge cannot sit in the court dealing a capital punishment, but vice versa, it has to be. Again, kol ha'ra'ui, anyone who is qualified to sit in a rabbinical court dealing with a capital punishment, he is obviously allowed to sit in a court dealing with monetary issue. There are 3 stages of court. We talk about it many times. Actually 4. One, it's called dayan, yachid, momche. Yachid, it's individual that is expert. You have a specialist that specializes in certain field, and people can go to him in a disputation. Small example, my father, God bless him, he was a rabbi of a large community for 43 years of his life. Before, he was also Rosh Yeshiva. So I remember vividly that issues like husband-wives, partners, one time it was the Israeli corporation transportation, subcontracted of Egla, which is a very big Israeli corporation. They have a disputation, I'm speaking many years ago, and they came to my father, and both parties agree that whatever he rules, they go by that. And for a couple of hours we heard us screaming at each other, but eventually he rules, and that was the deal, and they both sign, and that's it. So there is a concept that's called yachid, one individual that he is expert and everyone accepted him. One. Second stage is the beit din. Beit din has to be 3 judges, and they have to have specialized in a certain subject. Both parties needs to sign, they accepting the decision, and that's it. If that beit din is by the Israeli, for example, even a contemporary Israeli, if it's approved by the government, those beit din unloaded a lot of yoke from the secular court, because if both parties agrees, it turned to be the same ruling basically as the secular court. So when you have 3 judges, for example, when it's come to monetary issue, you have 3, and you have the head of the court, beit din, that rules. It's always in a sense 3. Then you go the highest, which is only in the Talmudic time, or in that sense biblical time as well. It's the 23 judges that sitting at the court, and they're dealing a capital punishment. Several examples, the one that was stoned in the Bible, several situations that stones in the Bible, in Tanakh. So you have to have basically a trial and a capital punishment by 23 judges. And then for sure the Sanhedrin, which is it's a variation, it's 70 plus 1 or 72, but basically it's 70 plus 1. That's the 71 people at the Supreme Rabbinical Court. No, here we have a situation that someone is qualified, but we examine his qualifications. Soon you see what's the exact qualification, such as someone who's just, for example, he is attorney and he convert to Judaism, and he can be or someone who's a very sharp mind, but he is mamzer, which means he illegitimate child, etc. So there are a lot of restrictions when it's come to this type of people, as far as being part But when it's come to rule over everyone else, to sit in a court, there are certain restrictions for those people who are automatically disqualified. So the Mishnah said, Kol ha'ra'ui ladun dinei nefashot, whoever is capable to sit in the rabbinical court to judge a capital punishment, which involve sometimes even in that time execution, ra'ui ladun dinei mamonot. Obviously, that judge, he is capable to sit in the small court and deal with monetary issue. However, veyesh ra'ui ladun dinei mamonot. There are some judges who are absolutely qualified to sit in the court and deal with a monetary issue. Ve'eino ra'ui ladun dinei nefashot. However, he is not capable to deal with a life-death issues. Here is the example. Amar Rabbi Yehuda la'atuyei mamzer. So, why the Mishnah said it? According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's because they want to deal with mamzer, which is illegitimate child, with all the environment. Several points. One, the gmarah tells us in Sanhedrin Lamed Vav, Sanhedrin 36, we studied it in the past. It's a quotation from the book of Shemot. In the book of Shemot, when Moshe Rabbeinu was advised to unload all the responsibility, the Torah used the word in chapter 18, sentence 22, Vehakel me'alecha v'nas'u itach, that they remove some yoke from you so others can take it from you. So the Talmud in the Sanhedrin derive from that you have to have judges meyuchasim kamocha, that they are qualified the same as you, so they can unload some from you. Which means you have to have certain kohanim, for example, that they can be meyuchasim, they can be the people who are qualified. So here Rashi explained, and he said, "La'atuye mamzer dekasher lidinei mamonot upasul lidinei nefashot." That someone who's illegitimate person, right? So he is basically can be in qualification to be in a monetary court, but not in the life execution and things like that court. Kidechtiv. That's the Talmud that said, "Kulach yafar ayati." They said in the Song of Songs that it's like language between God and the Knesseth Israel, that said that you are like perfect, my beloved. You are like, is no blemish on you. So in that sense, when God dwell on the court, when the court had the divine upon them, when they rules, they have to have someone who has no blemish. In particular, here they talk about court are dealing with making a decision over life or death of a person. So now the Talmud asks a question, Tanina Chadazimna. We already learned it. We are here in the Tractate נידה, close to the end of the Talmud, but we learned that in the Tractate Sanhedrin, page 32, we already learned that, so why we need to repeat it second time? Hakol ksherim ladun dinei mamonot. In Sanhedrin, we learned that everyone can sit, meaning every qualified dayan, judge, can sit in the monetary dispute court. Ve'eina kol ksherim ladun dinei nefashot. But not everyone is qualified to sit in the dinei nefashot, in the capital punishment court. So since we already learned it in the Tractate Sanhedrin, why here in נידה we need to repeat what we learned earlier? It's a side note, there's a difference between Tosfot and the Ran. The Tosfot learn here that that's the way sometimes in the Talmud they repeat to emphasize certain things. The Ran has a different approach, and he said that it's a general klal, it's a rule they want to derive from their repetition. Soon you see what. Vehavinan ba la'atuyei ma. So why we need to repeat it second time? Ve'amar Rabbi Yehuda la'atuyei mamzer. The reason that we repeat it second time, it's because we learned the whole idea of mamzer. So basically here the question, if we learn it properly, it's a question on Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because if we already learn in Sanhedrin that mamzer can judge in the in the monetary payments court, why we need to repeat it again? That's what the Sfot try to say here. So the question specifically is on Rabbi Yehuda. So now the Talmud explained what Rabbi Yehuda wants to say. He said, Chada la tuyei ger, v'chada la tuyei mamzer. So in one place we want to learn that someone who's a convert. So in the convert, soon you see it's an issue of sitting in a certain court, especially that dealing with a capital punishment. And the other place it's to teach about mamzer. Again, here's a limitation when he sit in court. We again learn each of them in the same rules, but in two different locations. One is the rule about ger, and one is the rule about mamzer. In both cases, in that sense, we allow them to sit when it's come to the monetary disputation, but not in a capital punishment. How do you learn it? Utzriche. So therefore you understand why we need both locations. De'i ashmeinan ger mishum dera'ui lavo bakahal. Because the Mishnah tells us in Kiddushin that ger, most of the people who are convert to Judaism, you remember we learn about Moab and Ammon, but most of those other nations can convert and become ger tzedek, righteous convert, part of us. It's we understand that ra'ui lavo bakahala, they can join us the moment that they convert fully to Judaism. Aval mamzer, however, someone who has a blemish, that was already not in his control, in a sense, it happens before he was born, the en ra'ui lavo bakahal, because the Torah tells us lo yavo mamzer bikal Hashem, he cannot marry a regular Israelites. It's a certain qualification certain people can marry, so therefore eimalo. So may you say that because he cannot marry everyone, therefore he cannot even sit in the court that dealing with a monetary issue. So we want to learn, no, one has nothing to do with the other, meaning the fact that he is a limitation of his marriage do not limit him from sitting in a court dealing with money. The second part wants to teach us that because mamzer mishum deka'at emiti pagshera, because mamzer, even he is illegitimate child, but still it's a child of both parents Jewish. So you may say, aval ger deka'at emiti psula emalo, but convert that came from a mother that it's not Jewish, you may say that it's you differentiate tzricha. So therefore we need to learn both places, which is the Mishnah in Sanhedrin and the Talmud in Sanhedrin, and the Mishnah here and the Talmud here in Нида, in both places, to teach us what? That regardless if it's a convert or it's a mamzer, both of them, they can deal with the monetary disputation court, but not in a capital punishment court. Just a small addition to that before we go to the next Mishnah. There is a very important Rashi in the Tractate Yevamot, page 45, that he asks a question. Basically the Talmud said that only if his mother Jewish, he can sit on the court. And here it turns that he can sit in the court, a convert, even the mother is not Jewish, he just convert to Judaism. And Rashi explained in Yevamot, Kuf Bet 102, and he said that that's the whole point here. The reason that we repeat it again, it's because to tell us that we differentiate in convert between capital punishment and monetary payment. And the Tosfot add to that, and he said, there is another sensitive issue, which is when it's come to a convert who wants to judge others who convert to, versus a convert that wants to judge someone who's born Jewish. So again, what we derive from all different sources is to teach us that it's an issue. We have an issue with someone who convert, who sit in the court and judge someone who's born Jewish, versus someone who's convert and dealing just with either convert or monetary payment. So monetary issues, both, regardless, mamzer and convert can sit, versus capital punishment, we are very strict who can sit in that court, and is a predetermination of qualifications such as ger and mamzer cannot. So basically the Mishnah teaches that one condition doesn't mean that the others, and vice versa. That's the whole treatment of all these Mishnayot. Next one is a short Mishnah. The Mishnah said, Kol ha-kasher ladun, kasher le'aid, veyesh kasher le'aid, ve'no kasher ladun. So later in the Talmud you see the point is for example someone who's blind in one of his eyes. So there is a machloket, there is different opinion between Rabbi Yehuda and the sages. What do you do with someone who's blind in one eye? The question is, there are two different avenues here. One is someone who's sitting as a judge in the court, or even individual to judge certain matters, versus someone who can be testified as a witness if he's blind in one of his eyes. So the Mishnah in general is saying that kol ha-kasher ladun, kasher le'aid, if you allow that person, soon you see that he's blind in one of his eyes, to sit in the court and judge, so that person can also give a testimony over something, can be a witness. However, veyesh kasher le'aid, however, there is a situation that one can be qualified as a witness, ve'no kasher ladun, but he cannot sit in the court and make a judgment. So let's go to the gemarah. If it's a famous question about the Devorah, the prophetesses, and the rabbis deal a lot with that issue. But basically, the most traditional explanation is because she was she has the divine inspiration when she was either inspire, teach, or judge. Anyway, the gemarah, la'atu yomai. What basically the Mishnah wants to teach us? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, la'atu yei suma be'echat me'enav. The Torah tells us that vehu ha'ed ora'ah, that a person needs to see in two eyes in order to give a testimony. Now, someone who's blind in both eyes, even before the incident, he was a regular person who can see in both eyes. But since he's now in a situation he is blind in both eyes, we cannot accept a testimony for something even he saw it earlier while he was a regular person with the ability to see. So now they ask Umani, okay, since the Torah required vehu ra'ah that the person see, Umani, who hold that opinion? So they said Rabbi Meir he. The opinion is according to Rabbi Meir. Why? Rabbi Meir hold that if someone, Rashi explained here, if someone is blind even in one of his eyes, he cannot judge. The Tanya, Haya Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir used to say, Ma Talmud lomar al pihem yihiyeh kol ri vekol naga. The Torah tells us in the book of Dvarim that according to those judges, we rule regardless to two manners. One is riv meaning meriva, is a dispute between two people. They're fighting, they come to the court, and the court needs to reconcile. And naga is negaim. Negaim, if someone has, for example, the Torah said there's on the body, and need to bring it to Kohen or in his house, right? So they said ve'al pihem, according to the way the rules, yihiyeh, we can rule. So what exactly, what one has to do with the other? Again, the original text, it's speak about a Egla Arufa, about they taking an animal and they're not sure when it's someone, they found a dead body outside of a city and they measure who is the closest cities, and then those who closest need to take responsibility. So they said according to the elder of the closest city, this they place their hand and they make a statement that we are not the people who are responsible for the death of that person. So since these are two issues, one is called Riv and one is called Naga. One is the disputation, personal disputation. One is the issue of the terminology, some body issue or condemnation issue. So they said here, Makish Rivim Lenagaim. One of the rules in the study in the Torah is Hekesh. We study it many times, that you have two words that you compare or juxtapose and you make the rules for both of them. So because Makish Rivim is regardless to a monetary disputation, Lenegaim to a physical or some types of contamination in the house. Ma Negaim Bayom Dichtivu V'yom Era'ot Bo. Negaim, you need to do it during the day, because then the Kohen examine when he look during the day, and that day he make the rules. Af Rivim Bayom, the same way is when there's a dispute between two people, it has to be during the day. Uma Negaim Shelo Besuma, the same way that when it's come to Negaim, you need to bring a Kohen that can see in both eyes and make a decision, which means if the Kohen is blind in one of his eyes, he cannot rule, right? Because the person who has the issue, he needs to show the Kohen. If you go today to a dermatologist, he needs to use a special magnifier to see it, even if he can see in both eyes. So in those days, if the Kohen needs to determine, he needs to be with full capacity in both eyes. So if his one eye is blind, he cannot do it. The Torah said it clearly in chapter 12. They said here, and chapter 13, sorry. Lechol mar'eh ne ha-kohen. Lechol mar'eh, meaning that the Kohen need to see in both eyes. Afrivim shelo besuma. That's also, if you have a disputation, someone who's blind in one of his eyes cannot sit in the court and rules in the personal disputations. And the opposite too, umakish negaim lerivim, is also go from nega to riv. Ma rivim shelo bikrovim. If you have a dispute between two people, so a close relative cannot sit in the court and judge, which means a close relative. The Torah said, lo yumtu banim alavot, the parents, the father not die because of the son, and vice versa. This is a famous statement. So the whole idea is that the krovim, someone's relatives, cannot sit in the court or cannot hold judgment. Af negaim shelo bekrovim, which means the Kohen, if he is relative to a person who have some issues, physical issues, the Kohen cannot be the one who rules what to do in that manner. Okay, or you can learn another addition. Ma rivim bishlosha, af negaim bishlosha. The same way as you have a disputation between two people, when it's come to monetary payments, you need to have three judges in the court. Also, you may say that when it's come to negaim, you need to have three kohanim. So they said, vedinu. You learn it from the Kal Vachomer. What? Mamono bishlusha agufo lo kol sheken. If you tell me that there is a dispute between people that involve money, you require what? You require three people to make decisions. So there's no bad feeling to anybody. It's three people that are absolutely neutral. So if it involved with his physical body, for sure you have to say that they have to have three people, right? Talmud lomar, so they teach us no, that's not the way it is. Why? Because the Torah said, "Vehuva el Aaron haKohen, or el achad mibanav haKohanim." A person should come before the high priest Aaron in the time of the Torah, or one of his sons at the Kohanim. So you see here that yachid, momche, individual that is expert, can rule. Halamadeta, you derive from that, she'afilu kohen echad ro'eh et hanegaim, which means, because you said vehuva el Aharon hakohen, and the Torah said specifically Aharon hakohen in the singular phrase, we learn from that one individual who's expert can judge individual. So what we learned so far, that Rabbi Meir hold that someone who is blind in one of his eyes, he can do what? Judge monetary issues. So it means that the Mishnah follow whom? Follow Rabbi Meir. That the judge can be blind. Wait, so now is the discussion. Hahu samya the hava b'shivu vutei de Rabbi Yochanan. It's bringing a story not because of story, but we want to illustrate the discussion here. It was a neighbor of Rabbi Yochanan, who is a giant scholar, that was an expert, but he was blind in one of his eyes. And people came before him, and he rules, and he was a judge. So they said, the hava dayan dina velo ka'amar le velo midei. That neighbor next door to Rabbi Yochanan was blind in one of his eyes. Yes, Rabbi Yochanan did not comment that it's wrong for him to do it. And he make rules and judge people even he was blind in one of his eyes. So they said, Heiche avidachi. How come Rabbi Yochanan let it pass and allow that blind person to rules? So they said, Ve'amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha kestam Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan hold what we said in the Tractate Shabbat 46. They said that when you have a Mishnah without mentioning the name of the Tana that have the Mishnah, so we follow that Mishnah. When there's no disputation, you don't see a different opinion, you just see a stam Mishnah, just a Mishnah, so we follow the halacha by that Mishnah. So Rabbi Yochanan hold that if you see stam Mishnah, that's the halacha, because it's appear like the opinion of everyone. So you follow that halacha. So therefore, with Tana and what we study, what we learn that Mishnah, kol kasher ladun kasher la'id. Someone who is accepted as a judge is also accepted as a witness. V'yesh kasher la'id, ve'en kasher ladun. There are those who are capable of being a witness, but not qualified to sit as a judge. V'amrin latu yomai. So what did the Mishnah wants to tell us? They want to tell us, V'amar Rabbi Yochanan latu yesuma b'achad me'enav. Rabbi Yochanan is the Tana that said clearly that what we learn from that Mishnah is that if someone is blind in one of his eyes, so we can accept that person as a witness, but will not accept him as a judge. Yet Rabbi Yochanan himself did not comment over a neighbor that he is a judge while he's blind in one of his eyes. So it's a pure contradiction. It's important to note that the Ran and the Rif and the Rosh, the three important early sages, they hold that blind both eyes by no mean is not capable, even according to the sages, is not capable by all means, because blind is a blind. You have to see, a person needs to see it. But one eye, it's an issue. So the gmarah responded and said, Rabbi Yochanan stama acharina ashkach. He found another Mishnah to prove his point. Where is it? Ditnan, we studied in Sanhedrin 32. They said, Dinen mamonot danim bayom vegomrim balayla. When it's come to a monetary disputation, we have this discussion during the day, and we can complete. At the end of the day, at the eve time, we can make decision. As you know, we talk about it in the past a lot, that it's a capital punishment regardless. You have to pass the time and you rule the following day. So since the Torah said here ubeyom heraot, that it has to be in a day, so we learn that it has to be during the day, and the decision can be at night. Blind person, it's a in that sense appear that blind person can sit in the court, because the way that we compare both Rivim and Negaim, it's appear that the blind person in that place can sit in the court. Umay old me the high stama me high stama. Since both Mishnayot is stama, it doesn't specify names. It's just a general rule. So why one is more important than the other, or why one we rule by the one and not by the others? So he said, "Ibayte mastama de Rabbi Madif." So if you have just a Mishnah that mentioned a general a Mishnah over something, it's a very general rule, we follow. But since in the Mishnah here, in the Sanhedrin, it's go by the sages, and here it's according to Rabbi Meir, we follow the Sanhedrin. That's one opinion. And so therefore, that's the reason why Rabbi Yochanan allowed a blind person one eye to rules. Beit. Another explanation why we prefer the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. Mishum de katan ela gabe ilcheta de dinei, which means that the Mishnah in Sanhedrin is the whole tractate that dealing with halachot in regards to either monetary payment or capital punishment, and that's the real source for these halachot. So since that place, when you have Stam Mishnah, general Mishnah, you follow there. Here it's in conjunction to other things, so you mentioned that. So because the real source is over there, and the real discussion over the court and the formulation of court and qualification of the court is there, therefore that's the reason why Rabbi Yochanan did not comment over his neighbor. It's important to know that some rabbis hold the whole story of the neighbor was the demanding person, that he demanded in a certain way, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan follow one place that in Sanhedrin that rules that it's okay. But in general rule, we learn from that several important things, that there is a certain qualification to sit on a court. Certain people can do certain things, but it has to be very careful, especially when you're dealing with other people, and it's different category between monetary payment or a life or death situation. Also, we learn the importance of the idea of seeing, and we compare a disputation between two individuals versus issue of determination of any sickness in the body. So they're two different things, but we compare in a sense that certain judges can rule in both while others not. Thank you.